friends, welcome to the devlog for Alpha 2 of Update 105 of Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. So what have we got for you this week? Well, I am back, and they have managed to remove the offending teeth from my face that were trying to kill me, and I am mostly recovered from it. Face is a little sore, which means we're back to work. We're back to adding things to H3. So let's talk about what we have for this week's alpha, which is a culmination of recent things and some stuff I've been futzing with for a while, slowly, while I've been under the weather and, you know, dealing with health and life. So the first little thing here, just a little a long requested G series pistol compatible with our Vector 45. So this is a 41 that takes 45 ACP, which means it's got the 41, I believe, is the longer comp style barrel. You'll notice its sound is a little different than the other ones in the family. I'm playing around with sort of different sample set, some different mixing approaches for it. Let's just take a listen to that in a different reverb. I love it. Pull that back. Oh, I love it. Good stuff. Good stuff. I actually think the holding angle on this is a little strange because it inherited from the Vector mag, because I had to make them cross compatible. So I will have to tweak that a little bit later. Wouldn't be a devlog without one of these sorts of things. Beautiful. Oh, I love that set. That last sound when it catches on the slide release is just delightful. Delightful. Had to do one more. So that is in there. Speaking of sound, this isn't in the current alpha, but this is a testing variant of the Mark 18 I have just for in my sort of local build. I plan to, sometime in the near future, do a refresh of pretty much all of the AR-15 pattern guns that are in the game, because they have been made over the years and they are not dimensionally accurate. They're not dimensionally accurate with each other, which means there's some alignment issues when it comes to magazines and just differences in treatment, and I've always wanted to sort of go back and make that consistent, and that's a project that's going to be happening over a while. But along the lines, I also wanted to get the sound mix a little bit closer to, you know, the sort of received experience of the actual one. So this is just a little bit of a, just in video only, a preview of making our AR-15 bolts and such sound a bit better. Oh. And it's just the mechanics has changed, none of the firing sounds or anything like that. This was my attempt to basically get a set in there that was sort of still homogenous with how gun sound tends to come across in H3, the sort of treatment, but that still just has the sort of tonal and sort of timbre quality that I've experienced, frankly put, now that I own one of these and have played a whole bunch with it. It has been forward in my mind, so love it. So, as I said, it doesn't sound like this in-game just yet, but when I eventually substitute in that new set, they will be inheriting these sounds. So the other big thing that this alpha is testing before I go full release next week is that a bunch of scenes have been migrated over to the scenario system that are now available here in our load scenario and save scenario sections of the wrist menu when you're in a scene that supports it. I've got about half of the sandbox scenes converted over into it, which means that all of the objects that appear in the scene when you load in are no longer this immutable part of that scene. They're part of the default scenario. So I can actually click this, load scenario, and you can see our G41 is back here. All of our other objects have been cleared, and if you'll notice, this table actually flickered momentarily. And the reason for that, if we pull out our toolbox here, grab locker, we should be set to unlock, and then boop, interaction unlock, is that our folding table is now a object as well. I lost tracking on my hand there momentarily. What is going on? I've got too many things. I have a shelf in my living room blocking my base station, of course. So this is what happens when you do too many things at once. So yeah, so this table, all of the folding tables in the scenes that have been moved over are now spawnable objects. They can be found in the sort of prop section of the item spawner. They can be, but once you lay them down so that they behave how you would expect, you want to pull out the locker tool and you want to interaction lock them. And then you want to physics lock them so I can like knock into them and actually put things on it without knocking the table over. The Destructibin is also a placeable object in this way, as are a whole bunch of other objects that have been in our various scenes. If we pop over to the Arizona range, I've done a similar thing over here. It's a little bit more sparse by default because I just wanted to make the sort of default configuration of a bunch of scenes a little more clean, a little more straightforward. But what you're going to basically see both next week when I do the full release and just ongoing is that I'm going to be adding different sorts of extra default configurations to a whole bunch of the scenes, both for just like demoing and as my way of adding different sorts of like challenges and levels and examples as I end up adding things more to our game planner scenario system. So this is our sort of new default setup in here, which, you know what, that is missing. That's missing its magazine. I gotta fix that. But yeah, and of course you can create can modify something about this and save your own sort of configurations. As I said, I haven't gotten to the point where we're ready to talk about how you'll share them eventually. I want to make sure the system all works and doesn't create errors and broken data before I open the floodgates of all of that. But now, instead of just having like the indoor range, there are I think six or seven scenes that now support this that you can go ahead and play with, which actually, if I go back to the main menu, you'll notice one other thing that I did in terms of rearranging the main menu, and this will be getting some more love probably after the new year, that I have to coordinate with the modders in terms of how they load their custom scenes, is that I have sort of broken the menu up into like games and holiday scenes over here, and then sandbox and scenarios over here. And my goal by next week is to have all of these scenes migrated over to the scenario system. The Breaching Proto and the Grillhouse XL will still have some stuff that exists outside of that system because I don't have the bot-centric parts of Game Planner working yet, but all the prop stuff will work as part of the scenario tools to make it just much easier for you to place, reset, and reconfigure props and such. So I'm super excited about it. So yeah, for example, redid the default configuration here over in the sniper range. All of the watermelons are the new watermelons. All the destructible crates are the new ones. There's a different selection of sort of default equipment here that's a little leaner, so because there were a few people with weak systems who'd load in here, and I think I had something like 10 guns and 30 attachments out, which was probably a little unnecessary to have as a default config in here. But as I said, I'm putting a default config with all these scenes, but you're going to be able to configure that for yourself as well. So, anywho, let's jump out of VR. A couple other really important things to cover, including some new merch. Yo! So, we're out of VR. What else is in this update that's important? When migrating over to the Game Planner system with the sandbox scenes that I've gotten working, which includes it's the indoor range, Arizona at night, sniper range, warehouse range, and GP hangar are all migrated over. And with the ones of those that aren't new, I basically went back and I completely rebuilt the collision and optimized a bunch of things about those maps. There's some of those are old enough that I built them before I really understood the way a whole bunch of overlapping physics costs worked in regards to mesh collision and bounds of mesh colliders and things like that. So the process of moving these scenes over to the system hasn't just been about like checking some boxes and migrating some props, but has actually been me sort of going back through the environment geometry and collision and making it make more sense and sort of rebuilding it to use the modern patterns that I have for having things run fast. Beyond that, I showed the tidied up main menu scene. What else? Some assorted metadata bugs, some bugs with the Pentagon from the last release. A few lingering smooth locomotion bugs have been fixed, especially any of you who are using toggling of locomotion coming on and off on your controller. There had been a regression where when you turned it off, it didn't kill your velocity. Now it does. So thanks for that bug report. And as I said, just a couple extra added sort of like props and destructible targets, things that were present in maps that I've converted over. And that's something that's going to continue. The Friendly 45 is going to be a lot of work to do in the next week to sort of migrate as much of its content over to this system. But I'm hoping actually that I want to have a default for it that actually is a leaner setup that's like almost completely cleaned out, because I know that's a very expensive map for some of you, and I know that the number of props and targets and things that are spawned are probably non-trivially affecting how expensive that map is to run. So for those of you who want to enjoy the environment and only have a couple targets out on a weaker system, hopefully this change will enable that, which, as I said, I'll be doing in the next week. So that's the basic, and I've of course re-enabled saving and loading in the new item spawner, which is present in all of these scenes as well. So please, this week, play around with it, test it. If you run into scan failures or load failures, if it's a load failure, make sure that you've saved it recently, because there have been some changes to data formats, so some old files may just choke. But if you're attempting to save something and something is refusing to save and you have a reliable reproduction case for it, please post in the bug report section of the Steam forum with the repro case so that I can investigate it and make sure that what is happening is supposed to, and if not, why. So, but I think that's pretty much it for what is going on with the actual update, because the goal with 105 is just to get the sandbox scenes all moved over to this system so y'all can play with it, and so that we can be back on the main branch again, so that all mods can just make sure that they have exactly one target for functionality, and so that we can get into Meatmas stuff, which I have been studiously pre-working on, because it's going to be an advent calendar year, so it's going to be a whole month of Meatmas and a whole month of Anton being up till like 1 to 3 in the morning for the entire month to push updates, so which I am preparing myself for. In addition to that, speaking of Meatmas and gifts, we have a whole bunch of new fun things in the Rust store, some of which you can see behind me. We've added a whole bunch of new wall art, which you can get either just as straight posters or pre-framed, although, because it's print-on-demand stuff, the framed versions are pretty spendy. But a whole bunch of these, we've got a bunch of alternate universe movie posters done by the Snowman, who's a member of the H3 community that we commissioned to make a bunch of stuff that is also going in the game as sort of decorations in some scenes that are in the game and some scenes that are planned in the future. So this is Coney the Hungarian. We've basically got a whole bunch of riffs on classic Schwarzenegger action films, because that seems like the most appropriate. We have the Masticator here with Bernard Schnitzelnuder. Did that scream? And we've got a bunch. Had him do a bunch of these sort of safety posters for the game planner scenes. They seemed sort of thematically appropriate. So, some fun stuff. I think we got a new hat or two. Oh, and also, I don't actually have them in hand because I have been cleaning. But we're going to be doing the series of sticker packs. I'll show them off next week in next week's devlog. Actually, there's enough stuff up there for now. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's fun to. I love doing merch that sort of like blends the world. Like it's a thing that's in a scene in H3, and you can also put it in your living space. I know a lot of people over the years have gotten the Amendment 35 poster, which we actually have a couple designs of original designs by Lucas as well. Let me actually grab this one. This is back. So we have a promotional advertisement for a new flavor of Sarge. Sarge, Pacific Conflict. And of course, a very important, it's really important during the holidays that you have PSAs involving personal health, especially someone like me who's just gone through surgery. It can be a big concern that it just, it's important that everyone just is reminded of the fact that hot dogs cause butt cancer. Look it up. It's for real. But, oh, my goodness. Anton's having a special day. So, yeah. Thanks for hanging around for my rambly devlog. I'm just so happy to be like back in the saddle and back able to work again and making devlogs for you folks and getting releases out, shipping content. And hopefully next week we can finally put a pin in update 105. And yeah, be back to main branch, back to I want to do a whole bunch of short releases after we get 105 on the main branch, because can't afford to be lost in a long alpha cycle when we've got a whole month of Meatmas coming up, which I am super excited about. I've just got some fantastically wonderful and weird guns to drop on you folks in the month of December. It's going to be a blast. Anywho, I will stop rambling. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.